Hello, everyone. Happy New Year, and welcome back to the Streaming Alchemy Show. I'm John Mahoney, and on today's show, we're going to be taking a look at Wirecast 13. But the real kicker here is that we're going to have Stephen Heywood from Telestream's OnSocial show joining us to go through a breakdown of everything Wirecast. And, this is something that, as we always do, we invite a lot of engagement. Stephen has a long history in the live streaming space. He was one of the early pioneers with the Tech Buzz show, and he has a whole range of shows he does nowadays as well. So, if you want to join us on air, you can connect to us via our call-in channel, callin.tv streaming alchemy right here. And, we'd love to have you join us on the show. And of course, any comments, we'll respond to as well. So, however you like to engage, that would be great. So, without any additional delay, let me bring on Stephen. So, Stephen, welcome. Great to have you here.
Hey, John, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So, we've, you know, we've been looking forward to the show. A lot of people have been telling me, this is something we've really haven't covered much, and it's probably a perfect time with the start of the year to dive into a bit of Wirecast world and everything that's going on there. So, probably a good place to start is just let's talk a little bit about Wirecast. Who is it targeted at, and what really sets it apart? What makes it a unique, valuable solution out there in the market?
No, absolutely. That's a great place to start. I mean, Wirecast is something that has been with me for almost the last 12 years of doing this, even before I worked for the company. Uh, Wirecast is something that can grow with you. Wirecast has the ability to do that. Uh, for the longest time, it was the only multi-platform streaming solution on the market. Uh, Within one product. There's a lot of products out in the market right now, but one of the things that we like to say is that Wirecast is targeted for the individual that wants to look professional without having that professional learning curve. As you know, John,
Yeah,
with a lot of the professional tools, sometimes it can take you longer than the production actually takes to complete. And it's something that somebody can just jump right in and start using and get that same TV quality on the web.
because it's not just the actual operational learning curve, but there's a lot of setup that goes into every production. And so streamlining that, one of the things that I've seen, from my experience with Wirecast is that it's actually fairly straightforward. If you're comfortable with an application like Photoshop, you're well on your way to becoming comfortable with setting up things inside Wirecast.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some of the things that Wirecast is included in the software are very high end tools and audio controls and virtualizations that you would expect from a $5,000 or $10,000 product, and they put it in a way that you and I, an average user, could just pick it up and go without having any broadcast background.
So, I mean, one of the things I think that if we want to jump in and sort of take a look at the UI, that's probably a good place to think about where are the differences and how does this really fit in uniquely? Because there's some things in there that people are going to be familiar with, but there's other things there that are really uniquely Wirecast.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of products out there. There's some products out there that are free. And one of the things that we like to say that separates us from a free product is we have an engineering team that is waiting for feedback from the customers, from the product management team, the marketing team, whoever's gathering that information from the community of users and saying, listen, we have a lot of users that really want this
Yeah.
feature. Our engineers go and they implement it, whether it's right away or if it's a few revisions down the road, or if it's a bug fix, anything like that. One of the things that I always say is, we have a world class support team. I mean, support is everything when it comes to these types of products, because if you can't get help with the product that you purchased, it's no good to you. It just becomes a paperweight, right?
Yep.
So having that ability, John, to get on the phone and talk to somebody, or if you get one of our hardware units, having the ability to talk to somebody to get it up and working when you're in that time sensitive, that time crunch broadcast is crucial in my opinion.
Yeah. So there are actually, but there are a range of Wirecast products. So let's see if I can call up the shot here, which has multiples of them. Uh, so Luke Dancy just said, "What you do with Wirecast, Stephen, is really amazing to see." So, Luke, thank you. Yeah, I know Stephen is one of the masters in this space. So we're really happy to have him on here to talk about this. So so there are
Uh,
three versions here of Wirecast that are pretty impressive.
yes, and they're all under $1,000, as you guys could see. We've got the range of Wirecast One from 249 all the way up to Wirecast Pro for 699 in a Wirecast studio, and you guys could see the differences. So if you're trying to get it on a ground level, maybe using existing hardware that you have webcams around, or John, today's day with NDI and things like that, your Android and iOS devices can become cameras,
Yep.
whether it's a tablet or a phone. You really have a lot of versatility now than 12 years ago when I started doing this. We didn't have phone cameras. We were doing everything we could to try to hack our phones to make it so we could use them as cameras. But there's a plethora of features just to give you an example. We have an advanced audio system, an advanced audio routing system, John, in the Pro version, where you can take multiple audio inputs, and let's say you wanted to send out three simultaneous streams, one in Spanish, one in French, and one in English, and have three separate embeds on a page, because you're trying to reach a diverse audience. You have that ability in in the Pro version, in the advanced audio mapping system that we have built in. Kind of like what you and I do with an audio mixer.
Yeah, because it does look like a full mixer when you go in there and look at it. It's got
It
a whole range of inputs, all of which can be sort of subbed out and routed. So definitely looked very impressive when, I was working with it.
and I'm sure you use this in the studio as well as I do, like compressor, limiter, gates,
Yep.
things like that. That is all cooked in the Wirecast as well in the advanced features where you can add a noise gate or a compressor inside of that the effects. So these are pieces of gear that would cost thousands of dollars to implement into your studio that we have kind of cooked into Wirecast for your broadcast
Yep.
to give you that one-stop shop, so to speak, for that person that is trying to look professional.
But all of these, if you started at Wirecast 1 and you went up to Pro, they still have the same basic UI, the same basic workflow model. So it really is something where you're not making a huge learning leap. You're just getting new capabilities and can sort of move along as you need uh, additional production capability to sort of move up through this range.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the biggest things I had 12 years ago when I started was, John, I mean, there had the Manny cams, the cam
Yeah.
twists, and things like that that were very, like, we'll call them webcam effects type of
Right.
software, right? But you learn that, you get good at it, and you did the best that you could with it, and then you upgraded to like a Wirecast, so you had to start all over again, and you had to learn everything. Well, what we're doing is we're giving you better effects, and we're giving you better software at that base level that you can get in on, and then decide, well, you know what, I'd like to add some five master layers of mixing, or I want to do two remote guests
Yep.
with Rendezvous and things like that. So I'm going to step it up the studio and pay the difference to get studio, or maybe I'm at studio and I want to upgrade to pro and pay the difference. So you're not learning anything all over. The UI stays the same. Everything you're just gaining new features, and that was something we wanted to do. We wanted to give somebody that is starting out the ability to grow with our software, because like I've always said, is Wirecast will take whatever you can throw at it. Because people always ask, well, how powerful of a machine should I get? And I always say, well, that
Yep.
depends on your budget, right?
Lindsay Badger just popped in and said hello. So hello, Lindsay. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, Lindsay.
So yeah, I mean, one of the things. So Ken Benedict actually just asked the question: does Wirecast have an audio ducker? Is there some way that if I were to talk, I could lower the audio of, say, a video that was playing in the background or a guest that was talking with me?
So currently, and I know what he's talking about in Final Cut Pro and other applications like that, you can do that. That is a request that has been put in. Currently, that is not available in Wirecast at the moment, but that is something that they're looking at having the ability to do that.
So yeah, so I think one of the other points, just before we actually take a look at the UI itself,
R-
is
Real quick, John,
yeah, absolutely.
along with that question, I'm actually going to be doing a video about how to uh, augment that audio, if you will. Like if you are doing an intro like a radio station, John,
Yep,
and you're playing the music and you want it to slowly fade out while you're talking without actually having to do anything. There's ways to do that in Wirecast that you can do. Using playlists and things like that. That I'm going to be doing videos this year on how to do some of that stuff. So watch for those videos because we're gonna, you could probably use the same type of scenario to do that audio ducking. It's just more of a manual solution, not necessarily a automated solution where it's listening to your voice. But that
right.
automated solution should hopefully coming in the future.
Yeah, but you do have sliders in the audio mixer
Correct.
interface, so you could
Yeah.
manually do this if you wanted to for specific types of situations.
So anybody that's familiar with Wirecast in the short, without taking the whole show to
Yeah.
do this, um, you can make multiple shots with different volume levels of that audio that you want to duck and add it into a playlist. So and set each one of those to a certain time period. So let's say the first 10 seconds you want it to be full volume. You create another shot where it ducks the audio down to, let's say 10% lower or whatever you want it to go lower. So it's under your voice. And say your dialogue is 2 minutes long. You set it for 2 minutes. And then at the end of that, add another audio shot that brings it back up to normal volume for say 10 seconds or
Yep.
whatever your setup. So there's ways to work around that, John, to make that happen.
So yeah, so I mean, I just wanted to close out. I mean, one of the other things, it's not just that you when you make an investment in the product, you're also typically, especially if you're a church or a school, you make an investment in training people, and not having to go through a new learning curve isn't just about the tech side, but it's also about the people side. And that can be a big deal for a lot of organizations that, don't have necessarily a full professional crew. They have volunteer workers, they have student workers where you're going to be swapping people in and out. So both the accessibility as well as the consistency when you go from version to version, I think is an important point just to touch on here.
Oh, and
So,
absolutely. That's one of the things that I said in one of the videos that we did for Telestream is how to train your volunteers in 10 minutes using Wirecast. Assuming that you had somebody there that knew Wirecast that you could get it set up, but you could train your volunteer how to run a production
yeah,
in 10 minutes. That was something that I did for the House of Worship scene. And you're absolutely right. We have a lady at our church who's almost 80 years old, and she runs our broadcasting setup, different weeks. And she was like, "Well, I don't know anything about computers," but we taught her. And
yep,
within a week, she was doing everything. And when I say a week, we have a service once a week.
yeah,
So after one service, she was doing it herself. We have youth kids that do it, and my son, who's 7, runs it for our kids' church program.
yep,
My daughter knows how to run stuff, so it's very versatile, John. When you get into the school systems, the house of worships, or even going into the government area, where we have a
yeah.
lot of government facilities using it for their minutes, for their meetings, and older folks using it.
So all right. So why don't we actually jump into the UI a bit here, and if you could bring that up, then we can start to talk a bit about that as well. So
Sure, sure. I'll pull that up here. We'll go to my desktop here.
okay,
If you guys want to pull
yep,
it up there. All right.
okay,
So I didn't open Wirecast yet, but I have it down here on my bar. I'm just gonna pop it open here. First thing you're gonna be greeted with when you open up Wirecast is, of course, tutorials. You got to have tutorials when you're getting going with this, right, John? So
absolutely,
having the ability to get in here and get some tutorials or maybe a tip of the day, access to sales or support or the community forums that we have. You get access to that, social media. On the right hand side, you're going to have your projects or your documents. Uh, these are basically your shows that you would store. As I have a few of them in here that I use for trainings. We're not going to go into them, but
Yep.
you can kind of see this is where it would store it, right? So we're going to create a new document right here at the top where it says create empty document, and we're going to click continue. Now you do have the ability to get rid of that. It won't show up all the time, but for this, I wanted you guys to be able to see this UI is very scalable. You can adjust the scales to see all your master layers, or you can scale it just like any other piece of software.
Yep.
So you don't see all your master layers. You can get it so it's just program feed or just preview feed or preview and program is what I like to do. Um, now you'll notice that there's color bars in there, John,
Yep.
on the master layer. This has been a new feature that we've added to the software to match our X keys, which I know you're going to be showing a little bit later. So we'll come back to that. But you can go back under the preferences in Wirecast. You can actually go back to the default look of the Wirecast, which is just the plain gray. Now, when I'm working with students or I'm working with volunteers at the church or I'm working with folks that I'm training, I like to keep it on the brand new X keys layer backgrounds because it helps identify layers as to what they're doing in the actual project file, right?
Yep.
So this gives me the ability to say, okay, on the light blue layer, that's going to be where all your logos are going to be. And on this light gray area, that's where your lower thirds are going to be. And on the yellow area, that's where your cameras and videos and things like that are going to be laid out. So what we're going to do here, John, if
Yep.
I'm going to show everybody how we can do a side by side. Well, let me start first with this. Let's just add a simple camera. We're going to click the plus sign. We're going to add my built-in camera FaceTime HD, and we're gonna click add.
Yep.
Now my camera is gonna pop up here, assuming I don't have any other application open, and I might have to enable it in the preferences because of Mac OS. So that's gonna be something here we can do here.
No, that's fine. So, I mean, I think
We
this
had this
is,
problem earlier, remember,
yeah.
with the permissions in this.
No, that's, I mean, I think the one of the things where you're doing this, Stephen, is that you actually are running on a Mac, and that's something that
Yes.
is fairly unique in the space. I mean, I think there's of all the major switching platforms, I think Wirecast and only one other are actually capable of running on Macs, and everybody else is sort of Windows based.
Right, exactly. So what we have to do is we have to enable this inside here. So this is a good learning tip for anybody watching this. With especially the new let me show that, John, because we
Yep.
want to take this be a learning tool too right on the show. So people might have faced this with Wirecast. If you're running Mac OS 10.15.2, you must enable this under the camera. So what I'm going to do is it's going to quit Wirecast. So we
That's
don't want
fine.
to
Yep.
save it right now. We'll go back and do it. So inside of your security and privacy area under camera, any of these applications that you see in here, if you're not getting a camera showing up, it's thanks to Mac OS
Yeah.
and their security preferences. Same way with screen capturing, right? Your screen recording, like if you're running ScreenFlow or any NDI sources or Wirecast, we
Yep.
found this out earlier. You have to put check marks in there, or what's going to happen is you're not going to get anything. So that's one of the reasons that things like that, cameras don't show up in software because these operating systems are trying to prevent you from getting any kind of issues. So let's try to add the camera again, John, and let's see if
Yep.
it should work this time, knowing that it's, going in there. There you
There
go.
we
There's
go.
my camera. So there's a perfect tip for you guys that may have run into that problem. So one of the things it defaults to, John, is there's a pop-out drawer. I'm going to close it just so you guys can see. There's a little caret on the left-hand side. The other way to open it is by double-clicking the shot, and
Yep.
a little pop-out drawer can open it. These are our source property tab, as we call it. You have the ability to rename your FaceTime camera. We could call that camera 1 if we wanted to. But one of the other big features in this, John, that is video delay is very expensive.
Yep.
Wirecast gives you the ability to delay video inside of it if your audio and video are out of sync, right? You can also do it with audio. We can delay audio. But in here, you could choose your resolutions of the FaceTime camera. Mine's only a 720p camera,
Yep.
so it automatically picks that up. We could choose the frames per second that we may need, or if there was audio settings. One of the other cool things is within a shot, you have unlimited sources that you can add to a shot. So if I was going to keep this simple for folks, one of the things that I would do is I would click on the plus sign here and I could add any host of overlays to this, John, that I want to. If I want to add a title, if I want to add a scoreboard, a QR code, um, since everybody knows what a title looks like, a lower third, and you have, let's add a QR code, right?
Yep.
So we're going to click add, and automatically that QR code appears here. And we can drag that QR code anywhere on the screen. We can also make it smaller just by grabbing the handle points on the side here, shrink it down, make it bigger, whatever we want to do. Now, okay, Steve, that's great. Well, how do I make that QR code work? Well, I'm glad you asked. So, when you go into your QR code generator, you have the ability to put the contents inside the box under the circle with 3 tabs. So I could put www. If you notice, it's going to change here. Watch. Watch the picture. Dot Telestream.net. So now that has changed it. So anybody watching right now, I'm going to make this bigger. And what you guys can do is if you take your phones and you pull up your QR code scanner and you scan that, it's going to take you to Telestream.net. This is a way that you, as a content creator, can put up different QR codes for your YouTube, maybe put text above it that says, here's my YouTube channel, go subscribe, or go follow me on Instagram or Twitter. This is a way that you can add all this into your broadcast.
So,
So for
and
viewers watching,
one of the
go
cool
ahead.
things here is everything you've done is exactly what somebody who would use Photoshop would know how to do. The resizing, the reposition, it's all just mouse based, dragging it around visually to make it look the way you want.
Exactly. And so now that I've got the graphic in place that I want to use for my broadcast, I'm going to come back to the layers tab because obviously, if you look, we have no audio going here. There's
Right.
nothing going. So if I push this live, nobody's going to hear me. So I want to add my audio by clicking the plus sign. And if you notice, Wirecast does a really good job of isolating where things are in the software. So obviously, I want audio capture.
Yep.
What type of audio do I want to use? I want to use my MacBook Pro microphone audio. So I'm going to choose that. I'm going to click add. Now, if you notice, I've got a green bar that's popping up and down on the left side of the screen. So now one of the things that I want to do before I push it live is I want to mute these headphones because I don't want it to come out through my speakers in my computer when I push it live. Otherwise, you'll get like an echo back because I have the
Yep.
headphones in for you, John, but not for this. So what we could do is either hit spacebar or hit the little arrow here that pushes it live. Now, if we close this drawer out, we have a graphic, we have audio, and we have video. Let me get a little bit of a headshot here. There we go. So that works, right?
Absolutely. That looks
So
great.
you you have the ability now. So if I'm doing a show from my studio, um, I'm able to say, hey, click on this graphic right here. It'll take you to my YouTube channel. Um, but now, John, I have no way of turning that graphic off. It's kinda, like, stuck there, right? Like,
Yep.
I can't if I want to do the show. So this is why we have this layering system. You can make it easier by doing it this way, but otherwise, I have to turn it off like this. I have to come in and click the eyeball and then re-push it live, and then it goes away. See, I don't like to do that. So what I like to do is remove it from the shot, and I like to come up here on the top layer, and I like to put my QR code. So let's do this. QR code 1, since we already created it, and click add. Now it puts that same QR code up here. But here's the cool part, John. I can add it and take it away without messing with my video shot.
Yep.
So that's the idea of the layering system. Um, Down here, I can add a lower third. So we'll just go with a quick title here. Just add that in here. Um, let's go with red. I got a lot of blue in my shot, so let's go with a red title. So just that simple, you can come in here and you can edit any one of these titles to be whatever you want it to be. I could type, and I'm gonna henpeck here because it's quite a bit away. But we can put my name in here. I'm taking your guys' job away for producing here, John. I'm sorry.
Oh,
They
that's
could
okay.
they could probably do it faster than I can do it right now. Um, so we can go down here and we could put we'll go Telestream. I promise all you guys I can type. So we got telestream.net is in there. So we'll close that out. So now we can push that lower third live. So I've got the lower third, but John, just like you don't keep the lower third up all the time. And that's the beauty of this preview and program window. So I could be sitting here and I could be, okay, I'm going to turn off the lower third, but still be talking. Or I could have the QR code and I move it over here. And let's say I shrink her down a little bit and put her in the corner. And let's say now I want the QR code and the lower third on. I can pull them both up, but I can also remove the lower third if I want to and keep the QR code up. So right now, John, I'm working off of three master layers,
Yep,
and that's all I'm doing. I'm switching from one to the other, and there's many options. You don't have to just use the mouse. You can use a keyboard. You can set up what they call is keyboard shortcuts in the preferences here.
yep,
Um, you can go into let me pull it up here, right here, keyboard shortcuts here. You can click the plus sign here and call the shortcut, I don't know, camera, or we'll go cam one, and then click the record a shortcut. So I'm going to we're going to do number one here. Let's click there and hit number one. So now it says number one, and I want it to be global because let's say Wirecast is minimized. I want to be able to still activate my keyboard shortcut.
yep.
So once I've got my keyboard shortcut there, I can go into the sprocket here on the bottom of the shot, and you'll notice there says keyboard shortcut, and there's my cam one. Now in the bottom left-hand corner, I don't know if you guys can see that of the actual shot, it has a number one. So what I can do is let me clear the layer, and now I'm going to hit number one on my my keyboard. Brings that up. I can hit spacebar, and it pushes my shot live. And I can do that for each and every shot, John.
So, I mean, the two things that I think were really interesting here is that preview actually is a composition window that you can manipulate while you're live. And it gives you that ability to set up your next shot, not just preview it, but actually compose it. And,
Yeah,
so,
but it also gives you the ability, John, of the way you're used to with traditional switcher is by going under switch, you can do a live preview swap, which is what you're used to with traditional switchers,
yep,
or you could do what's called auto live, and you could do them both. So what this means is, let me see if I can add another camera here. I'm going to add an NDI camera that I have. I've got so many NDI sources. So we'll add one of your live to air quad box shots, right? Let's see if this pops up in preview. If not, it could be being used by something else. So we're gonna see if I can do this.
okay,
Uh, let's see here. But you could do the swapping. Do this. There's your neural net. Okay. So what we can do here is we have live preview swap. It's enabled, right? You see it there,
yep,
and we'll set it to cut so it's an instant switch. So I could just sit here if I was having guests on, John, and I didn't want it to be super heavy, and
yep.
I wanted to have 4 guests in the quad box, and I was not very familiar with a lot of switching, I could sit here and just hit spacebar the whole time and switch back and forth between me and those guests, and the cool part is I could still add any kind of graphic overlay to that shot if I so choose.
Right. So again, this is just a layered approach with different uh, alpha channels, sort of transparency baked into them that cascades down. So when you have a solid layer, you see it, and then you see through all the transparencies on every layer above it. So something
Absolutely.
very normal for people in the creative space.
Absolutely. I mean, if you think about you made the mention earlier to Photoshop, right?
Yep,
So the topmost layer is going to be your most dominant layer. And what I like to use the example, and I don't have anything in front of me, but I like to use the example of imagine Wirecast laying flat on a table, and each of the layers are stacked on top of each other, right? So your blue layer at the very very bottom is going to be your bottommost layer. The orange layer is on top of it. The yellow layer goes on top of that, the gray layer on top of that, and the blue layer where the QR code is on top of that. If you start thinking of Wirecast layering system like that, you'll know exactly where to put the graphics in order for them to be seen. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So if I take this royal lower third here,
yep.
let's get rid of my camera. So right now, if I put that lower third up, you're like, well, great, looks great. Now I want to add my camera. Where did my lower third go? Well, my lower third went behind the camera because I layered it incorrectly. So that's where the layering system really comes into effect of knowing how to layer your setup, because if you don't, you're not going to have elements show up properly.
So every one of the elements, though, you can have semi-transparency, so it does true alpha channel. So as you saw with the lower third, you could see through that lower third into the background as well. So it's not just a cutout, but there is gradient transparency in it. So you can see more or less based on that level of alpha channel that was applied. And it also, when you slid the video camera feed over, it just shows that it's really based on the size and position of layers too. So if you have something behind something else, when you move that top layer, it actually, if it's not covering where that other layer is, it's a true stack. It's not just
Right.
blanked out, randomly. It's however I stack them. So you could lay out 4 layers in quadrants and still see all of them, even though some would be behind others in stacking order.
Right. And then you have the cropping tool and things like that. Now you mentioned about alpha channel. I happen to have a logo here. This is one of our Telestream logos that happened to be an alpha channel, just regular PNG. I'm just going to drag it in here that I have on a desktop here. And when I click on it, you can see, obviously, I got to position it and things like that.
Yep.
But it's just a regular alpha channel graphic. And so you can push it live. Now, obviously, it should be white.
Yeah, but that's
I didn't have a white, but you guys can kind of get you get the gist. You can see the alpha channel on it. But you could take we have built in here, John. We have stock media, excuse me,
yep,
and this is something we've kind of partnered with the company to bring this uh, to the Wirecast for audio and video. Now
yep.
you do use this at your own risk, and the reason I say that is because Facebook and YouTube have algorithms that have the ability to you'll be presented with a just an FYI when you go into this, that you may have to show like, hey, this is from stock media from Wirecast, because they're bots that basically pull down your content. I personally haven't anything pulled my stuff down from using it, but I'm just letting you know that there is that potential. So you can kind of use it. But anything in here, you can download it and use it within Wirecast. So if we wanted to like this cosmic city, you can get a preview of it,
Yep.
of what it is. You could search in here like my one of my things is arcades, so I could search arcade, and let's see what comes up with that. And here you got a picture of a guy playing an arcade system. So if I wanted this video, I could just click download, and you'll see I get a download manager here, which also allows me to find it on the hard drive just by clicking on the magnifying glass. But John, it gives me the ability to put it in here. Like, let's say I want to use this as a part of my game show. Like I'm doing a game show now,
Yep.
and I just want to use like this as a transition. I can just put that in there, and it'll play the video, and then I could kind of come back to myself here, um, in the system. So
Now you did
a lot of
this
functionality.
live, which,
I did do this
so
live.
you didn't have to download this thing in advance outside of Wirecast. So if you were looking for a background shot that you could use during a intermission or a break, you could actually do that while you're live. And say somebody talks about something, you have a speaker who raises something, you have that ability now to sort of get B-roll that could be interesting live in a production.
Anything as long as you have an internet connection. Or, hey, somebody might ask, well, what if I have my own videos? I happen to have a video here of my daughter that we did. I didn't do any special encoding. You can kind of even see by the name of it. This is just this is in my music studio. My daughter playing the drums over Christmas break. Now, obviously, you're not going to hear it, but she's over there sitting there. So you can essentially pull in any video. We recommend MP4 or MOV file formats because that's most widely used. And you can see you just drag it in, John, and it automatically adopts to the resolution that is there. And while that's playing, what I like to do is composite my next shot. So, if I'm coming back from this to
Yep.
talk, I can do that. There's also a countdown timer underneath it on the right hand side. I don't know if your viewers can see that, but there's a countdown timer to let you know
Yep.
how long you have until that video is over before your shot's going to come back live, or it's going to just hang on that freeze frame. There's a lot of features that you can do with that. Um, but let's say we showed enough of that so we can kind of click back to me.
Right.
So you have a lot of functionality, and you've seen I'm basically building a production here as we're talking in what, no time.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I know is always a challenge for people is understanding the different nuanced elements in a production system. But what I think is pretty unique in Wirecast is that there is a level of consistency. There's a camera is just a shot with one element. And so if you make adjustments to shots, it uses layers the same way that you have 5 layers in the core UI. And so all of these things use the same tools inside the UI to do the same
Mhm.
functions. So you're not like, oh, I'm in MEs now and I have to think this way, and I'm DSKs, I think this way. And it's kind of a refreshing simplicity that comes from that consistency. So I mean that's something I think that is pretty cool from what we've seen here.
I always tell people, John, if you can run PowerPoint, you can run Wirecast because you brought up an interesting you know scenario there with MEs, right? So in Wirecast, we work off of just simplicity, right? So what you would have to do in a traditional switcher to do an ME is kind of complicated if you didn't know how that switcher worked. But in Wirecast, you can click the plus sign here, John. I'm going to kind of duplicate what they had up just a few minutes ago with the double box.
Yep.
So I'm going to come down to overlays, and I'm going to go into titles, and I'm going to click add. So if you're familiar with Wirecast, you can see we've got these double boxes like John and I were in a little bit earlier. But I'm going to kind of go down here and I'm going to find it. And it's a let me see here. Remember what it's called. It's a picture in picture. Where is it at? There it is. Picture in picture daylight. I think it's a side panel. Let's see what that one is. There we go. So this kind of reminds you of John, the one that we were just in a little bit ago. So I'm going to double click that shot and we're going to open this up. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of this text because I have a lower third. So I don't want the text in there. So now I'm going to add my camera to this shot. I'm going to add the FaceTime camera, but now I'm over top of it. So I'm just going to hit the down arrow and now I'm behind it. So then I'm going to highlight my camera. I'm going to move it over here. And obviously I can shrink my camera down because nobody wants to see my big head in there. So I get it just like John was a little bit ago. And then what I can do is I can actually crop off that excess so that you don't have all that excess overhang, on the top, the bottom, because you still see your margins. We can crop that in real time while the show's going on. And I'm gonna add under the network input, I'm gonna add that NDI input here, John, of your neural net, and I'm gonna shrink that down because that's gonna become my quad box, what's gonna be in here. So just like that, get that set up. And then we just gotta add our audio. So let me add my audio, MacBook Air or my MacBook Pro, and now we've got our audio. So just like that, John, I just duplicated what you guys were doing in what, less than a minute?
Oh yeah, and it's sort of a pick and place. I mean, to date myself, it's kind of like the old color forms where you used to have the little peel things you could stick and place them anywhere you want it. So, but yeah,
Yeah,
I think that's great. So we just had John Drinkwater said, so can you use the same camera input into multiple shots and then choose the one you want live?
absolutely. In fact, I just did that. So if you notice, I have the FaceTime camera here, full screen, and then I also have it shrunk down there in my double box. So you can absolutely do that. Um, Sometimes what people do, John, to cheat a little bit when they're instead of having all these layers, what they'll do is they'll create a mass one video shot with a
Yep.
lower third, their camera, and maybe another graphic. Like they might put let's say their Telestream, we'll put the Telestream logo up here.
Yep.
Um, they might create a shot like that. Then they'll duplicate that shot and remove, say, the Telestream logo or the lower third. So they just switch between those two shots. So it takes the lower third away and it brings it back. But it's essentially two of the same exact shot. So there's no right or wrong way to compose that. Heck, you could even create a playlist and have it timed so it switches between those two shots. So it removes the lower third after 10 seconds and stays off for 60 seconds. And then it comes back on where you don't even have to do anything.
So the
So
sort
there's
of thing,
ways that you,
yeah, so this would be the sort of thing where if you wanted to have a bug appear and disappear, or do something where if you had online donations for a church, the ability to bring that up, every, 5 minutes and then bring it down so it doesn't distract from the overall service. Those types of
yep.
things could all be automated in this then.
Yeah, absolutely. So you could do something like this. Let me get rid of I'll just show briefly. So I'm going to duplicate this shot by right clicking on it. And then I'm going to do a duplicate shot. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna open this up, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna zoom in on my camera. I'm gonna scale myself in. I know that's scary, but we're gonna do that here. All right. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna push myself live. Whoa, hello. Now if you look at this camera, it's back further. So watch. I can give the appearance of a PTZ camera with the same camera. So if I make a bunch of shots and I let's say I'm doing a news show. I could be sitting here and I could set up a playlist to where I zoom in just like they do in the news, where you see the news desk and it comes in at you, and you could go, "This is tonight's news. I'm Walter Cronkite." Not really, but I play him on TV. So you can do things like that and give that look and appeal of professional news just
Yeah,
by
I mean,
just by something simple.
more specifically, the types of places where that would be used would be over the shoulder shots where you want to move the presenter to the side, put that up, and then move it back. And those could just sort of be baked in as 2 clicks.
You could, yeah, I'm sure you've seen them, John, with the Alpha Channel
Yep.
TVs that kind of come down from the ceiling
Yep.
uh, in motion. Somebody could, if they have that Alpha Channel movie graphic that they want to put in their shot, like you said, you could have the camera slide over if they're in front of a green screen. So it basically makes the person slide over and the TV comes down. And yeah,
Yep.
there's so many cool effects that you can do if you're creative, because you have the ability inside of here to do that. And we haven't even scratched the surface of the destinations, the recordings,
Yep.
the encoders, the codecs, things like that that really make this powerful.
Well, let me just touch on that for a minute because I think it's worth noting. I mean, one of the things that Telestream and Wirecast specifically are really known for is the quality of encode. And we know folks that though they may use different production gear for certain aspects, they still have a Wirecast box that's sitting there doing the encode. And that's really every everything that they produce is going out that way as their, RTMP, stream out to their CDN. So this is definitely something that, Wirecast, even if it's not your main switcher, can definitely play a role in your studio and become part of your, your overall, your overall production workflow. So
Absolutely.
yeah. So first, two things. First, JS Gilbert said hello. So JS, thank you for joining us. And
AJ.
and Lee Love just came with a suggestion. Said please add a lock capability to the shot list. So that
Oh, that's a good idea. You know, we used to have a feature in there where it was harder to drag around, and then people complained about it because they said they couldn't make playlists quick enough and fast enough. So definitely send in your feature requests. You can send them into Telestream, and with a support case, and let them know. Let them know you'd like to have that lock feature, and put it in there because, like I said, they listen to the customers. If that's something that you want, put it in a request and get it in there.
okay. So Stephen, I mean, we've gone through a lot, and there's a lot more here. So I don't want to sort of just flail around in a technology pool of cool features and
Yes.
functions. So if there's anything that you wanted to sort of add beyond what we've talked about already, why don't you sort of jump in and fill in anything that we could that we might have missed here.
So yeah, I think one of the biggest things here is that people may or may not know about is Telestream has their own cloud service. Now, if you're familiar with other cloud services out there, basically what they do is they allow you to stream one feed to the cloud, and then the cloud distributes that to say your Facebook, YouTube, Twitch channels. Wirecast also has that ability built in, and now it is a separate cost, and you can find out more about it. But there's also a free demo within inside of Wirecast. So let's say I wanted to go to Facebook Live, you could stream the Facebook Live, LinkedIn, all those other places. You can enable inside of here, right under Restream and Captions. Certain CDNs also allow you captioning. So if that's something that you need, that has that ability. And you can, like I said, you can click sign up here to do the restreaming capabilities. But some people don't have the bandwidth, John, to do multiple destinations like Wirecast can allow you to do. So having that preset built in is phenomenal. Um, Also, the ability with encoding to offload a lot of your encoding to your GPU. Now I'm on an Apple, so you see the Apple H.264, so that's
Yep.
going to offload a lot of my processing to my GPU. If you're on a PC or even a Mac Pro that had an NVIDIA card, and you see NVIDIA NVENC
Yep.
or Intel QuickSync, you can utilize the GPU to do the encoding. And I think that's something worth noting for this for people that are struggling with CPU power. You might have a good GPU. Um, you can offset a lot of your processing power, by using one of those encodes for record or for streaming. And John, something else is something you and I are familiar with in the traditional switcher realm, right? Is having the ability to output what they call a multi-view. And a lot of people have asked this: how do I get a multi-view? I want to be able to set up another monitor where I can just monitor, um, say my live inputs, my two cameras, and say my two rendezvous guests that are on here. You could set that up right inside of Wirecast to say, I want this to be live, I want this to be preview, I
Yep.
want this to be, my FaceTime camera, I want this to be, um, I'll just say my QR code generator just
That's
for
fine.
that.
Yep.
And then if I had another display connected to it, John, I could have four, or I could do as many as 17 slots like a traditional multi-viewer for those that are in a studio environment. Or if you wanted to do something where you had a TV behind you like I do, I cheat a little bit with my background, but I could put, say, you, John, up on that TV and stand there with a lavalier mic and talk to you kind of like the way the news does.
Yeah.
So
So I
these
mean,
are ways that
so one of the things that I know with the multi-view, there's a lot of people that use Mac. I mean, because it's one of the strong suits for Wirecast is that it does support Mac, and any modern Mac now. it's using USB-C with video capabilities. So the ability to add a monitor to a laptop, which a lot of people also are using, is it's really simple now. You can have
Yeah,
a full production setup with a small portable monitor and a laptop, which gives you multi-view capability with full switching, as a very portable interface.
absolutely. And in fact, my co-host on social, Marty McPadden, he uses his Wirecast setup differently when he goes out to some of his jobs where they have TVs inside, and he'll actually use it as an indoor video mixer for those for social media and whatnot. So that multi-view comes in handy for him to have
Yeah.
multiple inputs on a TV screen at one time.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of cool uses, and I think it's with all the tools that are available. I think it's just
Mhm.
creativity that limits you more than the tools. So I think that's a great example where that wasn't the intended purpose, but it does that, and it
Right.
gives you, now a whole new way to support a production and that's always fun when people come up with creative uses for your product that you didn't envision
Mhm.
originally. So I know that's,
Right.
for us, we always love when we see that sort of thing.
And that's something, John. Like I even use a copy of Wirecast differently than most people. Like, some people probably thought I had a green screen behind me, but it's an actual TV, just like you have a TV there. I have that running through Wirecast Multiview. So I could, if I wanted to during a show, I could grab the X keys, hit a button, and I could change it to whatever background I want, just like that on the fly without doing anything.
Yeah, and with things like NDI, you could have signage in a church or an auditorium
Yeah.
or another type of venue, and drive all that in addition to your production. So you have a lot of flexibility with how these things work.
We use a copy of Wirecast in our church for our overflow TVs, but they also do digital signage, like you were stating. So, I look at Wirecast as a versatile video tool that, even if you're using other products, Wirecast gear, you could find a place in your toolbox for it. Because let me tell you, if like you said, if you get creative, you can find some really, really cool, interesting workflows that you can do with it that would blow a lot of video professionals' minds.
Yeah, you just mentioned Wirecast gear because we haven't really talked about it. So let me see if we can switch to something here. I mean, Wirecast
You know,
does make hardware setups that, basically take all the worry out of, the configuration that you may have to do at the Windows level or, the Mac level. And it just makes it turnkey.
So the biggest questions I get all the time, whether I'm at a trade show or if I'm on a call with a potential customer that is interested in buying Wirecast gear and they want to know why should I buy this? One of the biggest questions I say, well, do you know what kind of CPU you need to use? And they're like, well, no, that's kind of why I'm calling you. Do you know what kind of RAM you need to be using or how much, um, do I need to? We had guys that actually tested different hardware to come up with the best possible configuration to make this work best with Wirecast, with a lot of trial and error.
Yep.
And you could have people sitting here watching right now say, "Well, I know how to build computers. I could build my own." You could, but with Wirecast gear, you're buying a solution that's been tested, it's been run through its paces with Wirecast, and if you're purchasing Wirecast gear and you're purchasing, say, our gear care, let's say you're at a venue, John, and you're out in Arizona where there's no stores for miles, man, but you're at a hotel. You call us up and say, "Hey, something happened to my gear unit." We go through the troubleshooting with our support team, and it's something that we find it's hardware related.
Yep.
We will overnight you a new box, especially if you're on site like that. Box comes, you set it up, you're good to go. That's the benefits of having a Wirecast gearbox versus building something yourself. If you fry your motherboard out in the road because you overheated it in a flight case, you're out of luck on your job. Whereas something like this, if it's hardware related that happened, it's under the warranty, boom, you're covered.
Yeah, and I mean, I understand this because I mean, though we use TriCaster here for our studio, that just having that peace of mind that you know there is a box that's set up and optimized for what you're doing, it lets you not worry about all the Windowsy stuff that you typically have to deal with did I get the GPU configured right, and is everything set, for how I have my fans running and how I'm handling and routing audio. That stuff is sort of baked. And that's a big difference, in terms of how we think of, what we build, when we produce shows. We don't have to worry about any of those elements. But
And one of the things that I know a lot of customers that buy gear, what they do is they like to put Adobe's Creative Suite on there.
yep,
So when they're done with the show, if they need to do any kind of editing, they can do that. It's a PC essentially. So we don't lock it down to where you can't put that software on. If you need to do some editing when you're on the road, you got a high powered PC at your fingertips. Where I know with other solutions, they lock you out. They don't like you to put
yep,
other pieces of software on. So now you're carrying twice the gear to
yep.
accomplish the same task. So that's another benefit of having the gear at your fingertips.
Yep. So Lee just made a comment about the X keys interface too. So this is something where again it gets it a step closer to having sort of the full hardware experience that people are used to, with broadcast gear, with traditional broadcast gear.
One of the big complaints I had for the longest time with Wirecast is having to control it with a keyboard and mouse because I'm the type of guy that if anybody's ever watched the shows, I'm always looking at the camera and I kind of play my controller like you would play a keyboard. I feel around, I know what's in preview, I can kind of see it out of the corner of my eye. Can't really do that with a keyboard and mouse, and that's where the X keys comes in really good. Having the ability to have a hardware tactile controller at your fingertips makes all the difference in the world when you're producing a show either by yourself. We don't all have a Matt and a Joe in our studio, so we have to we have to kind of rely on ourselves here. But in all seriousness, having that controller and being able to feel, John, I used to use a Korg Nano controller back in the day. I had guys that knew how to Apple script,
Yep.
and that's how I controlled Wirecast because they wrote Apple script to where I could control Wirecast with it by pressing buttons and moving sliders up and down for lower thirds. It was the greatest thing, but it made the production look that much better.
Yep.
And now we have buttons and controllers with
And this actually matches up with the general UI you had as well. So it
yes.
like a good production switcher, it sort of mirrors the controls that people are actually going to be able to use on screen, in the hardware panel. So that was something I thought when I saw this released. I thought that was a great move by Telestream to really support Wirecast in the professional space. And it is used in the professional space. I mean, we've talked a lot about it being, in churches and schools, but there are professional use cases out there as well that are, definitely significant and worth mentioning here.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we have customers from all over the world that use this, and I'll just name one that we had a call from that's using the Wirecast gear for the Christmas tree lighting in New York City for the web broadcast. So, um, these guys were using it to get that taken care of. I mean, I've seen where people have used Wirecast in the pits of a NASCAR race, giving you behind the scenes action of what's going on. I mean, they would have. I remember my boss was telling me they would have all this information before the TV crews even had it of like somebody that crashed or and you got to excuse my terminology. I do not watch NASCAR, so I but he said I guess when they go to the pits to change parts on the race car, they would have inside information that national TV didn't even have yet, and they're using Wirecast to do that. So a lot of great instances that these folks are using Wirecast and Wirecast gear.
Okay, so look, why don't we close the show here? Stephen, if you wouldn't mind sticking around for our after show. That way, if anybody had any questions, we could sort of handle that there. That's okay.
Absolutely,
All right.
that
So
sounds great.
cool. So we'll get back with Stephen in just a few minutes. But what I wanted to do is first thank everybody for joining us. We do have an after show, so if you had questions that you wanted to ask here during the show, didn't get a chance to, or if you'd like to call in and join us here with Stephen, on the after show to talk in person through any sort of thoughts or ideas you had around Wirecast or live streaming in general, that would be great. So if you stick around a few minutes after we end the show, we'll come back on and do that. So before I go, I just want to talk about our next show. So next week, we're actually going to be taking a look at production graphics and do a deeper dive into how you can combine Photoshop with new text, live text tool set to produce everything from lower thirds, other types of overlay graphics, and dynamic graphics that can be fed, as we've seen in the past, through uh, their type of data link, connections that are available. So we'll be doing that next week. So uh, if I'll see you in the after show, that would be great. If not, I'll see you next week. And thanks for joining us today. Take care, everyone. All right. So here we are in the after show. So
Hey,
so thank you.
so
So
I want to too, guys that are watching, Jeremy Kloosterman, who also works for Telestream, he is also in the chat room right now. So if you are not getting certain questions addressed or you need certain links to places, he's a guy that you could ping. He let me know he's in the chat room. So if anybody has any questions that need direct links, because I can't really get you links right now.
no. Well, let me. I mean,
Sorry.
two things. First, Lee just asked that we have you back on again, which is always pretty good. So, Lee, thank you. I would love to have Stephen on anytime. He's a wealth of knowledge here. The other thing, though,
I,
Jeremy, I saw. I'm not sure whether it was a show that you produced or whether it was another Telestream show. But Jeremy actually has a whole mobile kit that he put together for trade shows, all based on
yep.
Wirecast gear and anything that sort of offboard gear that he needed to do that. And that was really impressive because it's really compact. I mean, certainly something that's easy to move around, in an airline, shipping.
Yep. He was on our OnSocial show when he showed that off,
Um,
but before that, you might
yeah.
be thinking he was on with, oh, who was it? It was one of our resellers. He could probably say it in the chat room, but he showed it on there. He also had it out at the PTZ Optics,
Yep.
conference that they had. So he could probably show you guys pictures if you want to see it. He could post it in the chat room for you guys. But yeah, it's very, very nice.
Yeah, I mean, I got the chance to meet Jeremy out at the Stream Geek Summit, and now he's a great guy. And so, if you're not friends with him on Facebook, please connect. And definitely somebody that is worth knowing from the Telestream family. And Jeremy's just saying about the video guys. So yes, I've also
Video
seen
guy.
video guys is also they've done some great shows. Gary, I think was doing a demo of some of the Wirecast gear at a previous show. So definitely lots of places to reach out and connect with the folks from Telestream as well. So
And we're for the most part, we're pretty approachable, unless it's like in the morning we haven't had our coffee yet. No, I'm just kidding.
so
You could usually pretty much message any of us, and most of the community members will tell you, we pretty much respond when we can. If we don't know, we just tell you we'll have to find out. But that's again, this goes back to John, what we talked about as the difference between free solutions and paid solutions. You get guys like us that are in the community, that are in the forums, that are in these groups, that are not afraid to answer questions for you and help you
yep.
go in your broadcast journeys.
Yeah, because I know Jeff Fitzgerald is also, involved
Yes.
with the Wirecast community and does a lot of support there as well. So, somebody else, Jeff was on here. Oh gosh, I guess about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago. Uh, So time flies so fast. I mean, I can't believe it's 2020. So don't judge my sense of time for how long ago it
Oh,
was.
he's a
For,
great guy.
but
Yeah, he's a great guy.
yeah, so I mean, I think this is part of the point. There is a very broad community. So yes, so Jeremy is here on Facebook as well. So definitely reach out to him as a contact. But one of the things that I saw when I was looking at some of the stuff that Wirecast is actually producing is that they're from the hardware pieces like the interfaces, like the X keys interface, through the Wirecast gear and all the software. The fact that it's consistent, but also there are price points for really every community use case. From churches which really don't have a lot of extra money, all the way up to high end where my business depends on producing a stream. So, the corporate space would be a good example of that. You have solutions that address all of those markets. And I thought you know, that was a very interesting approach because you understand that it isn't just a software sale, but it's a sort of a holistic sale of how all these different segments could need different packaged elements in place and different support around those elements.
Yeah, I mean, one of these things, one of the things that we've been striving for, I know with a lot of the version 13 is stability. I mean, we've been wanting to get as stable as a product as we can. Not saying that we haven't put any features in it because we have, but the focus has really been on stability. I mean, because John, you and I both know as broadcasters, if you don't have a stable product, all the whistles and bells in the world aren't going to help you get through a broadcast. It's just not. So, um, and I say that because we'll give you some little inside information. We're going to be launching Wirecast 13.1 soon, and there's going to be an open beta that's going to come out very soon. And John, I will get you that information so you can get it out to your
Great.
community because we'd love for those guys to test it with us. Our product manager has told me before the show. She said, "Feel free to put it out there to everyone." So there's going to be a lot of stability fixes and some whistles and bells. And I'll be honest, I that's as much information as I got. So I think it'll be good to kind of see what the community thinks of the open beta in the forums, the Telestream forums. But
Sure.
I like the direction Telestream's going with Wirecast. Has been a user since version 2.85,
Scott.
I think it was.
So Scott just joined us. Scott Dieter. And yeah, Scott, I see a lot of what you post, so I'm grateful for all the insights that you share online as well. So thank you, for coming to spend some time with us. But yeah, I agree with you, Stephen. I mean, one of the key things I think, people don't necessarily see products from the development side. And so one of the things I saw in Wirecast 13 was basically in the development world what we call refactoring, taking a lot of old code and reworking it without necessarily changing the user experience, but the whole back end to that. And so there's a lot of little things like the thumbnails inside the UI now can be dynamic and sort of make use of the GPU, and there's more performance baked into a lot of the things. What we always call, every time you make a release with features, you take on something that's called technical debt. It's like, okay, I'm doing all this stuff, but there's a lot of dirt that I leave behind that I have to come back and clean. And that's sort of the nature of software development. And 13 was really, I think, a big release, not just for the capabilities, but also for the investment in clearing out that technical debt and creating the platform for the next, 8, 10 releases. And I think that's important because it shows that Telestream isn't just sort of milking a product that they have and bolting stuff onto it, but they're really investing in a product, with a long-term view. And that's important to call out when you see it because not every company and not every product really reflects that commitment. And that's something that's really good. So
Yeah, and I always try to tell people, people always say, "Oh, you like to say nice things about the company because you work for the company." I mean, well, that's a given, but I always tell my audience and I tell my viewers, like, if I didn't work for Telestream, I would still be using Wirecast. I think it's one of the most robust software solutions on the market right now. Has one of the best encodings that I've seen, and I've tested a lot of software. I've tested a lot of hardware, and for me, it does what I need it to do in all aspects. But what people have to remember is it's a tool like anything else. Just because you're using something else doesn't mean you can't apply this and use this in your toolbox. And I think that's where people need to get away from. I like this versus this instead of saying, wow, Wirecast has this really good feature that I could implement into my workflow that would make it 10 times easier
Yeah.
and give me that much more stability.
Well, this is it's interesting because one of the things we've talked about in the past is how NDI can act as that glue. And I
Yep.
think that's really true. You touched on it, but Wirecast has NDI baked in for input and for output. So the
Correct.
ability to take inputs from other sources that are, not Wirecast and bring those
Right.
in, and the ability to use Wirecast as an input to other technologies out there, all through NDI, make this a fairly simple proposition. So you can really move between different production gear for the best use cases, each one doing the job. And so I'll give you an example, and this is uh, we've used OBS for signage because it has very, very flexible uh, resolution. So you can put in sort of any non standard resolution. We use that. And we've used Wirecast for encoding. And so, when we look at both sides of that, we're talking now three different technologies, but each one sort of we're grabbing it and saying, this is something that I think it does well for where we have it and what's set up. And it's also something we come back to. It's people as well. You're always wondering, what do the people that I have on staff in manning a production feel comfortable using? So I mean, it's something that you can't overstate, that having people feel comfortable with the tool is critical. So, this is something where you can have people that may be working on another production but really know Wirecast and can say, hey, I can produce these different feeds for you. So maybe you can switch the cameras, but I'll do all the multi-box stuff. And because we have
Right.
NDI could be taking in the same cameras you're switching into Wirecast, repackage it, and create a brand new feed, which now goes into another production. So I agree with you. I don't want to get into the religious wars around, oh, TriCaster is great, or vMix, or it doesn't. I think it's a narrow way to think about the toolkit, and you can just really look at them and say each one has great strengths, and the people are more comfortable with different ones, and pull it together and make it work.
It's kind of like the age old argument of Mac versus PC, right?
Yeah.
Um, we we both are platform agnostic when it comes to that because there's some things that we have to run on a PC and there's some things we have to run on Mac. So
Yep.
you got to get out of that. You got to get out of that mentality. And I'm one of those guys that I have multiple copies of Wirecast on different machines because they do different things.
Yeah.
Like I might have one main copy, John, of Wirecast that I'm running, where over at my one arcade, my son, we run him, yeah, we run Wirecast on a MacBook Pro with a Stream Deck,
Yep.
and I have little icon thumbnails of what those shots are, so my son can look at it and he can actually switch between his camera, the on-screen gameplay. He could go to a double box of him and the gameplay
Yep.
and add graphics from the companies of the games that we're playing and send that feed over to me. And then I do the main switching between me and the 3 or 4 guests that I have on, plus our lower thirds, adding video. So there's a lot of creative ways that you can implement Wirecast into your workflow. And like you said, with NDI, we take the NDI out of Wirecast into another version of Wirecast. So
Yeah.
then I could do the switching here with that as a single source.
Which could also be a solution for people that have lower end computers they're running it on. So splitting it up and saying, I can set one computer that does the encode, so take that load off, and the other I actually switch the production. So That's another type of bifurcated use case where I can split things up and put them across different devices.
Hey, I'm trying to get a Joe and Matt. My son's starting out at 7, so
Right.
I'm trying, you know?
So yeah, so Steven's referring to the the brains behind the show, which are all the guys that run things here. So definitely, I am very fortunate that I have some wonderful people around me to take care of a lot of the stuff. But the Lee was just asking a question. He's talking about what do you see as the business opportunities for streaming in 2020? So more generally, I mean, that's a an interesting question to talk a bit about.
That is a very interesting question, a good question at that. I would have to say, from what I've been seeing, I know a lot of us are doing live shows, but it's kind of been diverted to people tune in if they have time, or we've seen numbers increase on demand, which we kind of saw. I think the real money maker is where if you can get to events or stream things that the public doesn't have access to, but you can get in there, you'll be able to make money doing that because people want to tune in and watch. The other things is if you get into a niche, like right now with what I'm doing on the side, my retro gaming slash game show that I'm doing, a lot of the companies see the quality of video that's being put out, so they're investing time and money, whether it's sending product or giving us exclusive access to things that would normally cost money. Um, because the quality's there and the audience is there because they want to come in and they want to see and they know we're going to do a good show, not just the personalities, but it's going to be quality of whatever we're showing. So I think for 2020, if you can up your game quality wise and you could find those niche places slash get on location, um, that people don't have access to, that's where I don't know if you agree, John, but that's kind of where I see the big money makers.
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, uh, it business is driven by reputation, so the quality element definitely has to be there. So it starts with craft, and get the craft down. Uh, because you don't regain, I mean, it's an important point because you don't really get that chance to rebuild reputation if you go in and you don't do the job that people were expecting. It is a small community in a lot of ways, and that gets around. So I don't mean that to discourage anybody. I mean, I think, people that are producing video, it's a great thing, but, sell within your capabilities. So that would be sort of the first thing I'd say as you go into the space. The other piece, though, I think it's, a refinement on basically what you said. You have to look at the corporate space for people that are looking to reach an audience, but haven't made the transition to understand the power of social media that could change their markets. And, some of that, I mean, some of that could be areas where people are used to just a different business model. So, for instance, we have politics coming up this year, uh, but there's probably a lot of things where people are going to want to float ideas, do forums, get feedback. So, how could you look at these types of opportunities where traditionally it's been, yeah, we do phone calls and polling and we have focus groups? How could you turn around and say, how could I combine live streaming and focus groups and all the interactive elements of social media and present a totally different value proposition to these people about how you can reach more, get better numbers, and come back and sort of have a better idea of where your market is? So I think it's really finding those opportunities, but not finding them because they're out there, making them. Like looking and say, I see what you're doing and there's a better way to do this and a different way to do this. Let me put a package together. It's one of the things we talked about in our last show about solution selling. Stop thinking about selling the technical capabilities of live streaming and think a lot more about how do I package these technical capabilities to solve specific problems that I see or to do things differently than they're being done today in a way that people are going to say, wow, I never thought of that, but yeah, you're right. And I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities in 2020, sort of taking it that sort of spin to the market.
If you think about it, John, I mean, you're a business person yourself. How many hours a day do you spend talking to people one on one about your product? You could probably say, well, let's just say in an 8-hour day, we'll just say this. Let's say if that's all John's doing, maybe he makes 8 connections, maybe seven, because you got to have some time to eat and,
Yep.
7 connections in a day.
And
He's on
coffee.
the phone with
Yeah.
somebody for an hour and coffee and coffee. That's 7 connections where John could go live and talk about his product for a half an hour. And let's say he has let's be generous and let's say he has 1,000 people that tune in. Okay. John, how long would it take you to talk to that 1,000 people one on one?
Oh, no, I mean, absolutely. You're sitting there talking
Oh,
months and months of time for those types of connections.
so businesses could get in their planning to get live streaming or live broadcasts about their products to go live maybe once a week, half an hour a day. Find somebody, hire somebody, whatever they got to do. You know how much Jeremy's in here? He does sales. You know how much time it would save if you could do that and then be able to, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like save that much time. Your bosses would love you. I mean, to be
absolutely.
able to talk to that many.
I mean, the other
So
thing, I mean, Scott just pointed out, he thinks that streaming and AI are going to be big in 2020, and I definitely agree with that. Uh,
yeah,
that may not be good for some of the skill positions that are out there. You may be able to get by with fewer people, but I also think it may open opportunities out there that smaller groups couldn't take on that now they'll be able to take on. So it could actually give people a chance to grow their business and to, expand in different areas that, they wouldn't have had necessarily the budget to do in, using, you know, less smart technologies. And I think camera tracking is going to be one of the big ones because I've seen some of the things that are going on in the camera tracking space with AI, and you combine PTZ with AI, and you've got some really impressive things I see going on. But
I know that.
one
That
other thing that I know you could probably see the same thing is you produce on social with co-hosts that are all located in different places. So none of you are in the same physical space. So the
correct.
concept of remote production, I think, is another thing that could create opportunities in 2020. Uh,
Hmm.
if you were to set things up around your community, say you had different doctors that wanted to go on, online and stream to talk about procedures or health, concerns or other things, having the ability to turn around and say, I can connect with them remotely, bring them in and produce a professional show without them having to leave the office. They could do it at, the end of a week on a Friday and just say, hey, from 3 to 4, I'm just going to go on and take questions from people who have, general medical questions about health and fitness. And these types of things with remote production now become much more doable and, can open up cost effective possibilities for people in the live streaming space who are looking to say, hey, how can I make myself more accessible, to a different market?
And I think, John, surrounding yourself with like-minded people is always something where, like you're saying, doing these remote productions because you still need a base, right? You need a base to start the show.
Yep.
Um, Being able to do something like that is remote is everything. I mean, I work remote. I
Yep.
do these things remote, so don't be hindered just because, well, I live in a rural area and I don't have anybody local. There's people online. If you can collaborate, so much I've found over the years of doing this is there's so many people that just they think they can do everything themselves, and then they realize you're only going to grow so much. And I purposed it even in the arcade community, the tech community, the broadcasting community to partner with as many people as I can. I know where I'm good at. I know my strengths. I know my weaknesses, and I just kind of stay in my lane, you know. But rather than looking at people as competition, if you partnered with these people and you guys did shows or remote productions, you'd achieve a lot more than kind of, you know,
Yep.
spending the time trying to do this all yourself because it's a lot. It's a big undertaking. And I think that we could see live streaming grow so much more, even remotely, if that happened, because you'd have resources to pull from.
And I mean, I know from my own experience is when you produce a show on your own, it can be very difficult. So uh, if you're starting, I think it's still a good idea to say, who else can I find to work with on this? Who shares a common passion and wants to communicate that? Just because it's going to make it easier for you to go live, and going live is the is the key to success. I mean, unless you're doing it, it's very easy to have excuses why you don't want to do it. And so not only does having somebody else give you, a broader base of content, but it's also like having a partner to go to the gym. They get your butt out of the chair when you might not really want to do it that day, and so like, no, we're doing a show, and it sort of gives you that anchor that pulls you when you don't want to do it, and that you can pull when they don't want to do it, and helps you move forward. So I think, to your point, Stephen, it gives you not just an opportunity for growth, but also gives you, a broader base of content and interest. And, you know, they bring in people they know and you bring in people you know. So you increase the base of people you can potentially reach. And this is a small community. I mean, you go out there and you get to know all the people, and you get to see what they bring. And I think you can't look at it as everybody competing with everybody. We do, in some dimensions, but it's not the attitude you bring into something. It's really looking for different ways you can cooperate to do something that maybe neither of you could do together and you could do alone.
Right.
And that's, I mean, that's sort of the nature of the modern market. It's transactional. You pull together resources and make stuff happen.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great time to be in this. Oh, you got a comment there, huh?
Yeah. So Scott just said that he's launching Hometown Media Network, which is basically multiple content creators can share content on IP television channels. Uh, and Scott, I actually saw when you did, when you just announced that you were launching that. It's basically a way to have uh, multiple content creators aggregate into a single portal that can allow them to reach a broader audience and sort of leverage, the law of attraction. You have a bigger mass of content, you're going to draw more people, which if you have content that's of interest, it'll rise to the top. People will find it. So yeah, I think, Scott, I think that's actually a great idea, and I'm definitely interested in learning more. Maybe this is something, if you'd like to, on a future show, come on and talk more about that. I think that would be great, because that's another interesting angle for how live streaming is evolving, and sort of this next phase of growth for it.
Yeah, especially if you have one centralized location of people that are considered um, trailblazers in that particular industry, and you have them all in one location for somebody. Let's say I was a viewer and I wanted to watch like you and Scott and whoever else he brings on, and they're well respected content creators in that area. If I only have to go to one location to see all that, that saves me time,
Yep.
you know? So I think it's a great idea.
So, we just had, let me see, I think Tom Sinclair just joined. Tom, how are you? Uh, good to see you here. Good to have you here. So I'm not sure. You Stephen have have a magnetic personality, I guess, because we're definitely bringing in a lot of interest. So this is great. But
Well, I had to watch the Streaming Idiots show, so I had some content to talk about today.
so
It's an inside joke. Tom will get it. We we had this thing years ago, but Tom's a great guy.
so I mean, I think this is actually what Tom has done with the Streaming Idiots. really exemplifies sort of the goals that most of us should have is that how do you build a community? And it stops being about me or you as a content producer and more about the community supporting the creation of content from everyone. And that's sort of the ultimate expression of success is always how many people do I end up helping become part of this community and expanding, where live streaming has an impact, and it does. It definitely is something. It def. So Tom's saying that you are a personality, all right. So he's. But yeah, I mean, it definitely is something that I think is important because we all sort of owe the guy that's coming behind us the hand up. Then say, yeah, there were a lot of people that helped all of us get to where we are. And it's always good to know that yeah, I can help the next guy come in because you never know. There's this is a community that sort of depends on these working relationships. So John Drinkwater just said, I'm planning on some virtual seminars and training this year. So again, another use case where uh, not only is that a great use case yourself, but this is also a great use case where if you have expertise, it gives you a forum to then share that. If you're doing these types of webinars where you can bring other people on beside yourself and create that engagement around different detailed topics. I think of if you have a university in your area and you can make a relationship with subject matter experts in those areas, you have years of content that you can produce talking with these people and sort of teasing out the nuance that goes into a lot of these disciplines that people don't necessarily understand the depth that goes behind them. So lots of different use cases in the streaming space.
I think a lot of people just are scared to try things. I think they wait for somebody to try it and then they get out and do it. And I would just say to anybody out there, just do it. If you have an idea, go with it. Don't let somebody tell you, well, that's not going to work or I don't think that's going to work. You don't know unless you try.
Yeah, and we're all our own worst critics. I mean, I can I can tell there's certain shows I come out of and go, oh, I don't want to look at that one again. But you sort of do because you learn. But
Yeah.
having the patience with yourself to not write yourself off as a failure before you're giving yourself a chance to succeed, I think is really important. You're not you're not going to be good at anything when you start. And
Right.
you have to measure your own progress against where you were and where you want to be, not against everybody else that's out there and say, well, I didn't get as many viewers or I keep having trouble looking at the right camera. I mean, all these things are things you learn over time. It's a skill set that comes with doing, and I think that's just important. So no. Oh, Tom is
You
just everyone is invited to
Yep.
their meetup at NAB. It's Monday night. Yes, NAB this year is starting on a Sunday. So that's different. So anybody that is planning to go, you're going to be leaving Saturday if you want to get there for the full show. And it ends on Wednesday now as opposed to Thursday. So that's the point. And if you haven't been to the Streaming Idiots meetup at NAB, it's a gas. You'll get to meet everybody that you see online and great conversations. It's just a whole lot of fun.
do I get another did I get a do I get another koozie this year, Tom? I still have my other one. It's over here. I was actually looking for it earlier. I was going to grab it, but it's not within reach.
So
Uh,
and it's chroma key green. So
it's
you
pea green.
so it's,
But John, to your point before that message came in, honestly, like if you go back and look at one of my first videos that I've ever done, I was streaming on Ustream.tv when that was actually a thing, believe it or not. And I broke every cardinal sin known to broadcasting. I sat with a built-in microphone, a built-in camera. My wife and I were getting ready to move. We've just bought a house out here in the Western PA area. We're in our apartment, white walls. I had boxes piled up behind me. I'm sitting there, with the worst lighting in the world, headroom out it was just crazy. And I had 50 people sitting there watching me, and I thought it was great. And I look back now and I sit there and I go, everything that everything I did wrong, but I still built an audience because people like me. People like what I had to say. They like the content.
Yep.
And everything that I did wrong, I would have been sitting there watching me 12 years ago going, you did that wrong, you did that wrong, you did this wrong, you talked like you said this too many, you go through, but like you said, you learn. I learned over the years you need a microphone, no matter what kind of microphone. You need a microphone and you need a good camera and good lighting and you know,
Yeah,
things
but
like
the other thing though, and I think it's really critical is you do need good content. You need to be
you do.
you need to be sharing something that people care about. So
I agree.
I think, while there may be a lot of technical mistakes that, we all make and, it's part of the learning process. I think the one thing you should never compromise on is the content. I mean, have something to say, be focused, have an arc where you sort of lead people along to get them someplace and make where you get them worth the trip. So, it's sort of the narrative process still applies in a live stream, and and do your research. I mean, I think that's the other piece. If you're going to talk about things that are technical, try to make sure you've researched it enough or qualify it, because what you'll find is there are a lot of very smart people in your viewing community that if you ask them a question, say, I don't know this, but could somebody come back? You'd be amazed at how many people just, you know, wanna help and want to become part of everything that you're doing. So it's a process, and it's a journey, and it doesn't end. I mean, you're always trying to refine, and you see the things that you don't like about yourself, your delivery, your presence on screen, and you just try to work on them. But ultimately, don't be afraid of being you. You know, don't try to be
You
somebody
know,
else in it.
John, when I don't know something, I pick up the phone and I'm like, John, is this happening to you? Did you have that? We had that issue today, right? I
Uh,
I'm not afraid to sit there and say I don't know everything. I'll be the first one to pick up the phone, and be like, John, am I going crazy here?
No, I mean, and and it's the same with all of us. I mean, I, as I always say, I like to surround myself by very smart people because it 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 makes life so much easier when you have people you can reach out to. But no, I totally get that. So so
So what did he say about the koozie? Did he respond?
yeah,
Can
oh,
we get
yeah.
a can koozie?
He said there's going to be koozies for everyone. So you you
Like,
you'll have no
hey,
trouble.
is mine gonna be autographed this year? He didn't autograph mine last year, and I was a little disappointed.
That was probably
Hey, hey,
because it would get in the way of the chroma key. So but it may be chroma key blue this year. So we'll see. That's part of the surprise.
I did get a selfie with him last year, so I guess I'll have to settle for that.
So no, so it's
Good time though.
I
It is
think
a good time.
that's a great time to for everyone that can do that. So look, we've been live now for almost an hour and 40 minutes. So
Oh my
I've
goodness.
been taking up a
Can I get
a ton of everyone's time here, but so if you have any other questions, just post them now. Also, if you want to join us on air, you still have that. Uh, Joe, could you actually just switch to the three box on here? I just want to show that we have a slot waiting right over there for anybody that wants to call in. So if you were to Yep, yeah, that's the side right over there. So if you wanted to join us, you'd show up right there. So we're actually gonna we'll probably produce a show that talks about coming on air, because I know it's probably something that people are a little concerned with doing, but it's actually a pretty smooth process. And believe it or not, Stephen is coming on air through the same mechanism we bring callers coming in. So it's a very conversational type of interface. You don't have to worry about anything there. But all right, Stephen. So
I
I think we
use it
have
freely.
I think we've tapped out everybody's questions here for today's show. So thank you very much for joining us here. I really do appreciate you making the time, and as much
No,
time as you have here. So
no, I appreciate it. I hope we didn't bore everybody, but if down the road, people want specific areas of Wirecast, so we want to get into it. If you want to do it as a show, or you just want to talk about broadcasting in general, let me know. I'm happy to join.
yeah, so let me know. I mean, if you guys would like at some point to do something like an Ask Me Anything type of show, Wirecast with Stephen, I definitely, if Stephen were open, to produce another show like that, I think that would be great. So just let me know here. So Tom, thank you. So everybody, I really appreciate all the comments and all the feedback during the show. This has been great. So I think we're done now. So, Stephen, you can now go back and enjoy the rest of your Friday. And for everybody else, thanks so much for taking the time out of your day to join us. We sincerely appreciate you having you be with us every Friday. So, thank you. So, until next week, take care, everyone. Thanks a lot.